Hi guys, it's Cassie and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, I'm a first-time mom of a 7-month-old baby boy and I had a natural home delivery. The natural part was on purpose, the at-home part, not so much. So if you're interested in hearing that story, I'll put the link to that video down below. If you're here, it's because you are considering how you can go about having a natural birth, whether a natural birth is even possible, and I'm here to tell you, yes it is, and share some of my tips and tricks on how you can go about having the natural unmedicated birth that you want. So if you're interested in finding out what those tips are, then just keep on watching. So first and foremost, I just want to put a little bit of a disclaimer out there. I don't think that women who give birth naturally unmedicated are any better than a woman who chooses to have a medicated birth. Those medications were created for a reason, and they definitely serve a purpose. At the same time, I knew that I wanted to have an unmedicated birth just because I personally believe that a woman's body was made for birth and child delivery, and I wanted to experience it. So those are my reasons, but whatever your reasons are for wanting or not wanting a natural birth, that's totally up to you. So first and foremost is you need to find the right healthcare practitioner. I am biased towards midwives. I love midwives and I highly recommend that every woman who has a low-risk pregnancy uses a midwife. However, that's not exactly possible. Specifically in Ontario, there's not enough midwives to go around, so you pretty much have to put yourself on a wait list as soon as you pee on the stick and see those two lines. And even then, it's kind of a toss-up of whether or not you get one. The reason why I love midwives is because I find that midwives are huge supporters of natural labor. Not that they would ever tell you that you shouldn't use medication, but they tend to be huge supporters of natural labor. They tend to believe that a woman's body was made for birth and they allow birth to kind of run its course without too many interventions, unless baby's health is at risk, of course. And they allow a woman a lot of autonomy over her body during pregnancy and childbirth. So that is my number one reason why I love midwives. Just because you have an OB doesn't mean a natural childbirth is not possible. You just have to find the right OB that will support your decision to have a natural birth and avoid using unnecessary interventions. So you can go about this a couple of ways. You can ask friends and family who have used an OB who supported natural labor for their OB's name. You can ask your general practitioner if they know any OBs in the area who tend to promote natural birth, or you can just ask some questions during your consultation. You don't necessarily have to go with the first OB that you are referred to. So some questions that you can ask your OB are, what are their thoughts on natural labor? How long are they willing to allow a woman to labor naturally without providing any medical intervention, assuming that baby is healthy? How long will they allow you to be pregnant before you get induced? Some doctors out there are known for wanting to induce right at 40 weeks, but there's evidence out there that says that that's not always necessary. And a lot of women say that induced contractions are a lot more intense and painful than natural contractions. What are their unplanned cesarean rates? So this is not accounting for women who have to have cesareans either because of a prior cesarean and they're not eligible for a VBAC, or because the baby is transverse, or whatever the reason. But it's just some doctors out there have reputations of if things just aren't happening as fast as they would like, they say that it's time to have a cesarean. Ask your OB what methods of pain management they recommend that aren't medication, that aren't an epidural, that aren't, morphine or other types of drugs that they give you. Ask them if they allow for intermittent monitoring. Ask them if they allow for you to be mobile while you're in labor. Ask them if they allow you to deliver in a position other than on your back. These are all really important questions that you can ask your OB when deciding if that OB is the right fit. Now, I will also note that with an OB, your OB is not necessarily going to be the one that delivers your baby. It all depends on who is on call when you go into labor. So that is important to keep in mind because you may have found the most perfect OB who will allow you to have all the freedom and autonomy that you want, and then that's not who you get in delivery. So it is just something to keep in mind. So this is not to say that all OBs are like that. There are a lot of great OBs out there. However, some do have that reputation of trying to hurry things along. So that's why it's important to ask those questions when you first meet your OB. My second tip is to find the right support person. So a lot of times when women hear the word support person, they automatically think of their spouse. But I'm talking about somebody who is not your spouse. Your spouse is not your best support person for a number of reasons. One, they also need to be supported during this journey. And I know you're probably like, what do you mean I'm the one that's about to push a baby out of me? Yes, but it's hard for our spouses to see their loved ones in pain. And depending on your spouse, they may not handle childbirth quite the way that you would expect. Additionally, your spouse is not always the best person to tell you, no, you're not going to get an epidural when you're going through transition and screaming that, like, yes, I'm done, I want the epidural. And they say, no, that's not what you want. They're probably not the best person to do that. My number one recommendation would be to hire a doula. However, I know that it is not financially feasible for everybody. I didn't have a doula because I didn't really know what a doula was until I was like right at the end of my pregnancy, and I wish I had them. Doulas are great. They will do pretty much anything for you, and they will be your advocate during childbirth. They'll help you with your breathing, they'll massage your back. They're a level-headed person that you can talk through your options with if the doctor does suggest, Pitocin or breaking your water manually or things like that. In the event that you are unable to get a doula, another good option is finding a family or friend member who has also had a natural birth for the reasons similar to your own. This way they will know what you're experiencing, be able to relate to your situation a little more. And sometimes, our mother or our sister or our aunt or our grandmother isn't always the best person. You want somebody who will be a source of calm in the midst of the chaos that is childbirth. A lot of times women's mothers or sisters or all the aforementioned family members think that they deserve to be in the room, that they deserve to be able to see the child born because it's their grandchild, their niece, nephew, whatever. It's not always the case. If that family member is a source of anxiety, not necessarily the most relaxing, and not somebody that you feel comfortable having in the room, tell them no. Choose somebody who will be able to support you the best way that you need to be supported, which is will support your decisions regardless of what they are and have your and your baby's best interests at heart. My next tip is to educate yourself in the childbirth process. So take a childbirth education class. Try and find one that specifically focuses on natural labor. So you can do that by asking your healthcare practitioner. A lot of times doulas, I find, run childbirth education classes that are very informative and they focus on natural childbirth. The reason for this is that you want to be aware of the stages of labor, primarily the first stage. Within the first stage of labor, that there's early labor, active labor, and transition. And it is important to know, to be able to identify what those stages are, recognize kind of what stage you're in. And I also found it extremely helpful because transition tends to be the most painful. It tends to be when a lot of women who have decided they're going to give birth naturally decide, oh my God, this is so painful, I can't do it. But it's also the shortest. And for me, that was a really calming source of information to know that when I was at my most intense pain, it meant I was almost over and I was one step closer to meeting my baby. I also recommend that you watch videos of women who have had natural childbirth. So it can be as simple as watching a labor and delivery story or vlog on YouTube. There are actual videos of childbirth happening, which for some people that's a little bit too far, but just gather as much information, listen to what all of these women have to say, watch videos like this video that you're watching here in order to help educate yourself on the process, the different coping techniques, and just learn what other women have done. Doesn't mean it'll necessarily work for you, but the more knowledge that you gain, the better. So that brings us into the next one, which is to learn natural coping techniques for labor. I'm not gonna lie to you, contractions are painful, but they are nowhere near as painful as I thought they were going to be. I think I was just prepared for something way worse than what they actually were. I honestly believe that mindset is the number one key to being able to have a natural labor. If you are confident in your ability, if you believe you can cope with those pains, you will be able to do it. Not accounting for times where emergency cesareans are necessary. Obviously, stuff like that happens. You can't control how your baby's going to react to birth and contractions. But for the most part, if you truly believe that you have the strength to have a natural childbirth, you definitely can do it. But you need to be able to cope with contraction pains successfully. So some of the ways that you can do that are through breathing techniques, through massage, having your partner massage different spots on your back, through laboring in the tub. I've also heard that it's helpful if you have a detachable shower head to aim that at certain parts of your back during contractions. Using a TENS machine. I never had the opportunity to use a TENS machine, although I had planned, but because I ended up going into labor 3 weeks before my due date, I didn't quite get it ready. But a TENS machine is a machine that you put on your back and then it sends little pulses through your back and they're supposed to distract you from the contractions. I have heard that works great. You can try walking, moving around, rocking, whether it's rocking while you're standing, rocking on all fours. For some reason there's this preconceived notion that women need to labor in a bed on their back, and that's actually the most uncomfortable thing that you can do. There's also sterile water injections. I know midwives use that. I never had to use them, but apparently it's pretty effective if you have pretty intense back labor. So they're inserting sterile water into your back, and the idea is that the pain from that will take away from the contractions. Get an exercise ball. I found the exercise ball to be extremely helpful. Being able to bounce on it, rock on it, and just breathe through my contractions. That is what got me through most of my labor, along with the tub. Those were my two favorite combinations. There are so many different coping techniques out there that I didn't even know existed, because when you think of pain management, you automatically think of epidural. And there are so many other options that you can explore. So make sure that you talk to your healthcare practitioner, talk to a doula, talk to your friends and family, watch lots of videos out there and explore your options. My next tip is the tip that got me into a little bit of trouble, and that is to labor at home as long as possible. Now, I 100% take responsibility for the fact that I had my baby at home, and that's because I was being way too chillax about the whole thing, and I should have had my midwife come and check me out a lot earlier in the day. But I was terrified that she would come and be like, woohoo, you're 2 centimeters. And I'd be like, okay, I've been in labor for 12 hours, now I'm discouraged. So keep that in mind. However, if you go to the hospital at the first sight of contractions, chances are you'll be there for a lot longer, and you'll be guilted into getting an epidural. You hear lots of stories of women out there who say that, you know, they were in the hospital, they were laboring on their own, they were doing great, but then the nurse came in and said, if you don't get an epidural now, you're not getting one. And then they panicked and was like, well, what if I can't handle this later on? And said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get the epidural. Laboring at home allows you to create the environment that you want. If you want, you know, the lights off, if you want music playing, if you want to watch a movie, if you want to eat some snacks, you're able to move freely. I've heard of women who put inspiring pictures and quotes up on the wall, pictures of items that empower them as a woman, you know, lighting candles and using essential oils and different aromas. But whatever it is, but you're in your own home, you're in your own environment, you're able to create the environment for the birth that you want. And so if you have to have a hospital birth, laboring at home for as long as possible allows you to kind of get in the groove, do things the way that you want for as long as possible. And last but not least, recognize that you are not a failure if you decide to get an epidural or use pain medication. Labor is hard. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you bring your baby into the world. Like I said, epidurals and pain medication were created for a reason. And if it comes down to it and you need it, good for you for trying. And one final thing, this doesn't necessarily have to do directly with labor and delivery, but I think that this plays a huge part in being able to have a natural birth, is see a chiropractor regularly throughout your pregnancy, specifically more towards the end. Find a chiropractor that specializes in the Webster technique, and this can help for a number of reasons. It can help baby get into position, so head down in your pelvis. It can help align your pelvis, which will make for birth to be easier, and you're less likely going to need to require any type of interventions. I swear by the chiropractic treatment I received during pregnancy. I started going around 30 weeks pregnant, and I went up right until I gave birth, and Camden shot out of there. And I swear a large part of that is because of the chiropractic adjustments that I was receiving. Those are all of my tips for how to have a natural birth. I hope you found these tips helpful, and if you're pregnant, I wish you a safe and happy pregnancy and a healthy delivery. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, follow me over on Instagram at Cassie's Corner, and check out my blog, which will be linked down below. Until next time, bye guys!